addressed. But for Social Starters, we're particularly driven and motivated by 4 key areas. The first is around youth disadvantage and opportunities and creating more opportunities for young people, as I mentioned before, to overcome some of the barriers such as unemployment or inability to access healthcare or education, and looking at ways that we can support social enterprises that are trying to overcome those barriers. We're also very committed to diversity and equality in entrepreneurship, so the importance of having more diversity in people that are leading enterprises, whether they be social enterprises or not, because that can have a real impact again on employability, on job opportunities, but also on the economy more broadly. We're really committed to supporting creative economies or prosperous creative economies, because we recognise that they are some of the most diverse. There's a tendency to be more diversity in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity in the creative economy. So we want to support those enterprises that are working in that area. And also sort of a massive issue for everyone is around sustainable planet and waste reduction. So thinking about how we can support those organisations that are committed to creating an impact around reducing the damage to the planet in terms of recycling, or rather doing more to support social enterprises that are trying to address some of the damages that are happening around the world. And through our work in supporting social enterprises in different parts of the world, through our enterprise support programs, 3 of the main things that come up consistently as challenges wherever we're working with social entrepreneurs, whether that be in Brazil or Sri Lanka or in the UK, there's sort of 3 key areas that consistently are what social entrepreneurs lack to be able to go further, to be able to create more impact. And those are around skills, or lack of money, and a lack of time. And so we design programs that try to address those issues and help social entrepreneurs plug in those gaps where they may be lacking. What that looks like in practice is through 3 main strands of activity. So we run consultancy programs, and that is not Social Starters necessarily doing consultancy directly, but going back to the idea of bringing together professionals from corporate backgrounds who provide consultancy support to social enterprises at very low cost or pro bono. So for the social enterprises, they're getting expertise and knowledge from professionals that might be experts in marketing, human resources, finance management, business development, and the professionals that they are matched up with are then given the opportunity to build up their skills or apply their skills in a completely different context. So they're actually stretching themselves, getting out of their comfort zone and seeing how that corporate experience can be applied in a purpose-driven context. And we've run those programs, as I say, in Brazil, but also in Sri Lanka, in India, in Kenya, and also in the UK. And what our specialty is matching up professionals with the right types of assignments within social enterprises where they can really feel that they're having an impact and make a difference for those organisations. And this image is just an example of one of those programs, or rather the training for one of those consultancy programs that we've run in Sri Lanka here. The second strand of activity that we typically deliver at Social Starters is through mentoring. So whilst the consultancy programs tend to be shorter term, normally running between 8 to 10 weeks, intensive support from professionals going into social enterprise, we also design and deliver mentoring programs which are over a medium or longer term period. So they can be anywhere between 6 months to 9 months, in which again, we match a business professional with expertise in areas like marketing or sales or business development with a social enterprise that has a lack in those areas or needs more resource or support to be able to drive forward and improve their sales or boost their impact. And we match them up with a business mentor that is trained to apply their skills within their social enterprise to help them work towards an overall goal or objective, whether that's to overcome a business challenge or to test and deliver new ideas, and receive ongoing support for a period of time through mentorship. We typically deliver the mentoring programs in collaboration with corporates as part of their objectives around corporate social responsibility. So it's a way for these organisations to provide their team members with a new and different professional development opportunity. And they get the chance to work within different types of organisations, but equally it offers them a chance to retain those employees that may be feeling that they're not as fulfilled in their day jobs, but then get the opportunity to do something that is more purposeful through volunteering and through mentoring. So we design those programs to both support the social enterprises, but equally to support those corporations to actually offer fulfilling training and professional development opportunities for their team members. And then the final main strand of our activity is around capacity building. So this is where we work directly with the social enterprises offering training and support for them to upskill and develop their knowledge in particular areas. And this takes the form of accelerators or incubator programs, which combine mentoring, but also actually face-to-face training or remote training on different themes that are challenges for those organizations. So this image actually captures the most recent incubator program that we ran, as Vivian mentioned, in Rio. So this was the social impact incubator that was delivered in partnership with an NGO called Esplange, which had a focus on female Afro-Brazilian entrepreneurs working in favela and periphery communities in Rio. And the concept and the inspiration for this program was that we recognized through our work in Brazil previously, there are many women based in favelas and based in periphery communities that were doing really powerful and impactful social enterprise or social impact projects, but they were not accessing the right type of support or weren't even recognizing themselves as social entrepreneurs in that ecosystem. And so we designed a program which brought these women together to share learnings, to offer peer-to-peer support, but also to help them to run their projects and businesses more effectively and more efficiently to create more impact and to be more sustainable. And so we look to design programs that fulfill specific needs for different groups with a view to helping them obviously to create more impact ultimately, but also to be able to keep doing what they're already doing, but better. So that's the sort of main three strands of our work. And in terms of impact to date, we've worked with over 380 professionals. Those are individuals that might be based in various countries around the world. We're a remote first social enterprise, so individuals can take part from wherever they are because we connect them with the social enterprises to provide that support virtually. So we've worked with entrepreneurs from the US, from Australia, from Brazil, and also with professionals that are based around those countries as well. We've been able to offer over £1 million worth of pro bono consultancy time, so the equivalent time given by the consultants or the mentors in supporting the social enterprises has that equivalent value of over £1 million since we started in 2014. And we've worked with over 350 social enterprises through the different programs that we run, whether that be consultancy, mentoring, or the capacity building and training. So having explained hopefully what SocialStarters does and why we do it, just wanted to talk a bit about some of the key learnings from running these programs. So when we reflect on sort of what drives us and what makes us an organization that's able to connect with diverse groups and diverse organizations and people, I think it's the ability to adapt from a global idea, but also taking it locally. So we've always been very ambitious about where we work. We don't limit ourselves to any one territory, but our ability to do that, to be able to sort of run capacity building programs in Rio or a consultancy program in Sri Lanka, only works because we're able to relook at how we can adapt our support model, recognizing that there is a format that can work quite well on a more holistic or on a more general level, but obviously we need to adapt all of those programs to fit in with the local context. So what we may run for female entrepreneurs in Rio obviously doesn't necessarily translate to what we might run for rural social entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka. But that's not to say that there aren't opportunities to take learnings from both those programs and offer an adapted approach that really helps those different types of social entrepreneurs learn from each other, but equally have access to the best bits of those different programs. So we try not to limit ourselves, but also need to recognize the importance of being able to pivot and adapt our approach to make sure that these global programs really resonate and connect with what the local challenges are and recognize the local context that we're operating in. I think it's important to be able to experiment and explore new ideas, but also explore where you can learn from or have to make changes when necessary to sort of adapt to the, as I say, local context. Another key learning most recently, but also just generally, which I think reflects sort of an area that I'm particularly passionate about, is recognizing the significance of intersectionality when we talk about entrepreneurship, whether that be social entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship in general. One of the sort of key learnings and inspiration for creating the social impact incubator in Rio, which is sort of captured here with the group of women that we work with on one of the cycles, is that although we talk about social entrepreneurship being a great leveler, it's a great way for many different people from different backgrounds to create change in their communities. There are also a lot of barriers that these groups also face. And they're often, many of the women that we worked with were driven to start their social enterprise from necessity, but equally there were limitations on what they could do because of these same issues that they faced. And if we were trying to run an enterprise support program For women in these contexts, we need to recognise the barriers they faced just because they were women, and the barriers that they faced because they were Black women, and the barriers that they faced because they were Black women from poor communities such as favelas or suburban communities. And without that sort of recognition, without sort of adapting the programs to the needs of those groups, whilst you're able to offer some level of support, you're not able to create long-term solutions if the offer isn't adapted to their needs. That's not to say that you can't push those women to do better. It's not to say that you can't have high standards for those groups, but you need to recognise, or it's important in the programs that we deliver and that we design, that they recognise that there need to be adaptations that are made, and there needs to be additional support that reflects some of those challenges, which can offer many opportunities, but also many barriers along the way as well. The third learning that I wanted to share here was around, linked to our learnings from Brazil, but this need to create networks, to create greater visibility for the entrepreneurs that you might be working with, and to enable different social enterprises or small or medium enterprises to be able to connect with each other, to create new business opportunities, but just to have more visibility, to recognise that there are many faces to social entrepreneurship. It isn't necessarily one profile. And what we've learned is that by enabling the social entrepreneurs to connect with each other and share learnings, actually they can get much more from what we can tell them are the most important lessons in terms of running a business or creating impact. And actually creating a space for collaborations and creating a space for partnerships, actually that can give greater visibility to the entrepreneurs that we work with, and using the consultants that we connect those social entrepreneurs with, the mentors that they connect with, to grow their networks, as it's a way for them to create new business, to have more visibility with potential buyers or supporters that can be advocates for their organizations as well. So thinking about how the enterprise support programs can create a space for collaboration, obviously, between the social entrepreneurs, but also between the volunteers, between the mentors, between the different consultants that are part of that program as well. And then finally, this idea of embracing remote first, I think it's not necessarily a massively new lesson, and certainly is something that everyone is having to do in the current situation that we're in. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, SocialStarters has always been remote first, and we've always, as a team, operated remotely. And it's been something that has given us a lot of flexibility and agility in terms of our enterprise support programs. So, for example, in supporting women entrepreneurs in Brazil, one of the key barriers for the women that we worked with was actually being able to come and access the training in person, just because the infrastructure of the city in terms of public transport and being able to get from the west zone of Rio to the center of the city can be really very difficult in terms of mobility. But by running a program in which we could run training sessions online, that the women could access content on Google Drive or via WhatsApp, just created much more flexibility for them. And that was even before, we were forced to all go online and be working remotely. So actually, although it can feel as though it's a bit of a barrier, recognizing that actually we really enjoy connecting with each other and being in a space physically, there's actually some real strength in being able to look at how being remote first can create more opportunities for different groups. For those that are isolated by their location, potentially, actually by being able to operate remotely can really open up doors and enable them to reach new customers, new networks, new collaborators. So really taking the opportunity to embrace that and seeing how that can be integrated in the support that you offer to different social enterprises. And I think that is all from me for now, but thank you.
Muito obrigada, Gisele. Acho que seus aprendizados são muito inspiradores para todos nós. Eu gostaria de passar agora para o Gereons, fazer a apresentação dele, e a gente volta a conversar, e acho que grande parte desses aprendizados aí são fundamentais aqui para a nossa realidade brasileira e para as organizações que estão aqui, a gente volta a conversar logo mais. Gereons, então, ele é representante da Maze. A Maze tem esse papel também de contribuir para o fortalecimento dos negócios e na conexão com investidores. Ele vai apresentar um pouco mais o trabalho que eles fazem. Ele está representando aqui a incubadora da Maze, que é a Maze X, que é um programa de incubação pan-europeu. Então, a gente está falando aí de diferentes países. Acho que ele vai poder explicar para a gente até melhor o que é esse pan-europeu. Muito focado também em startups de impacto social com uso de tecnologia. Então, vou passar a palavra para o Gereon. Seja muito bem-vindo. O tempo é seu, Gereon.
Thank you so much, Vivian, and thank you all for coming here and having me here. I'm very happy to talk to you. I speak in English because I am not like native in Portuguese, so bear with me. I hope nothing gets lost in translation here. But yeah, my name is Gereons Wellmann. I'm coming from Germany. I live in Lisbon in Portugal. A little bit about my background. So I came here last year for my studies. It was my last semester of my master's studies in business administration. And I came to Portugal for a semester abroad, and that's where I met my professor and now my boss at Mace, Antonio Miguel. And he is, yeah, as I said, he's the founder and the CEO of Mace, which is a social organization which is there to drive social and environmental solutions at any like level. So basically what we have is we have like 3 solutions. One is the fund, which is investing in social and environmental startups. Then we have the accelerator. And last but not least, we have government performance. And I work for the accelerator. So I'm happy to talk more specifically about the accelerator. So the accelerator that we're running from Mace is called MaceX, and we are there to scale social and environmental solutions. So we work alongside startups to make them scale their solutions, help them with everything from mentoring, like when it comes to marketing, fundraising, but also narrative and their storytelling. We help them like with all sorts of things in a very individualized and customized support. Basically, what we do with them is we have a 3 months acceleration program. They come to Lisbon, usually. This year was a little bit different. And then for 12 weeks, so the 3 months they're here, and we help them like with all those tasks from marketing to fundraising, to narrative, to sales, within our team in-house, but also externals. We have like experts on board. We have advisors, like a global network of advisors. And during those 3 months, we work very, very intensely with them. It's a cohort of 10 startups that we gather that are coming to Lisbon. And then it is, yeah, as I said, like we come together with them every week. They get to know the other startups, and we exchange like all the experiences that the different startups have, but also like our expertise that we give to them in those group sessions and individual support. And then what we're also doing is we run workshops with them, marketing again, like sales, fundraising, like very dedicated workshops that we run with them on like focus areas. And we help them with whatever they may require. So within those 10 startups, there's a little bit of a separation there. We have 7 generic impact startups, can be anything from this year, for instance, we had a startup that is focusing on dyslexic people. So it helps with a font type to help dyslexic people read in a browser on the internet, because dyslexic people have reading difficulties. And this startup would help those kind of people to read websites on the internet. This is one example. So we are very, very generic. Like there's not like, we're not focusing on like, for instance, sustainable development goal 1, 2, 3. We're like very generic on like all SDGs. And we are happy to help them all equally. And what we do with them is just making sure that their solutions get the best outcome in like any focus area that they want to target. So again, like we're very like generic in that sense. We have 7 startups that we take in that are just accelerated in whatever they want to accelerate. And then we have 3 startups that we're running a pilot with. So we match them with a corporate. We have a bank, BNP Paribas. We have a law firm, PLMJ, and we have a hospital called Luz Saúde here in Lisbon. And those 3 will be matched to them, and they specifically work very closely with those corporates to implement a pilot there. So they have
Acho que talvez a gente tenha perdido a conexão.
Eu acho que sim, Ju. Ele deve estar... Vamos aguardar um minutinho só para ver se ele retorna.
Turma, só checando. Eu estava no canal com tradução, o áudio sumiu, né?
Isso, eu acho que ele caiu, Ju. Fê, o Gereon caiu no meio da fala dele. Vamos aguardar um minutinho, ele já deve estar voltando. Caso ele não volte, a gente já vai começando uma rodada de perguntas com a Jiselle.
Vou só pedir...
Para fazer um reforço para as pessoas colocarem suas perguntas no chat. Desculpa, Fê, por favor.
Nada, só pedir para a tradutora avisar a turma que está no canal, porque quando vocês falam, fica mudo um tempo. Que a gente está aguardando a volta dele. Caso a gente ainda não esteja ouvindo.
Hello, I'm sorry. I think my connection got lost here. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, Gereon, thank you. Thank you.
And I'm very sorry about that. My connection got lost. Okay, perfect. Everyone can hear me. I don't know where exactly I lost you, but I think I was losing you at the point where I was talking about the startups and what we are looking for in the startups that we take in. So the startups that we take in are like generalistic, impact driven, as I said, but what does that exactly mean? It means that we are specifically looking for a lockstep model, meaning that this startup is clearly addressing a social issue in the first place and creates a profit on the side. So by tackling this social issue, it is creating a profit. And that means, for instance, sticking to the dyslexic company, they're tackling a specific issue. They're helping dyslexic people to read and have like all the advantages that we have, that we take for given. When we go to the internet and we want to read something, then we can do this. For dyslexic people, this is much harder. So they would go to the browser and it would not be readable or very hardly to read. And with this dyslexic reader, they can read everything that's on the browser. And that is certainly a solution that both corporates, but also individuals seek for. So they primarily sell this solution to corporates to make sure that their website is barrier-free and is non-discriminatory, so everyone can read their website. And this, for instance, is like a clear impact angle there because it's targeting a social issue that is present, and by helping to overcome this social issue, they're making a profit from that. So this is what we're looking for. In terms of traction, we don't have like any restriction. We're not saying like, oh, I don't know, like you you're running a pilot or something, that is not enough. It is very like customized. Everything that we stand for is customization. So we are looking for a certain traction. There needs to be some validation that this is a real issue, that they are capable of solving this, and that we can also help them, right? It's a partnership between the startups and us as Accelerator to really help them get the best out of this relationship. So for that, we need to make sure that there's some validation from the team, but also from in terms of like the traction that this company has, that gives us an indication that this is working and that the startup knows what they're doing there and that they're capable of scaling this solution and creating a big social impact for the world.
Bom, acho que tivemos um problema novamente com a conexão do Gereon. Juliana, Fernanda, vocês confirmam?
Sim,
Sim.
sim. Tem dia que a tecnologia não joga a favor, né?
Exatamente.
Essas questões de conexão, né? Esse mundo virtual é maravilhoso, mas tem dias que ele é mais complicado.
Vamos aguardar um minutinho para ele concluir a fala dele e a gente já entra nas perguntas. Ele também já deve estar nos minutos finais, mas acho que a gente pode aguardar o retorno dele até para a gente abrir, aguardar as considerações e abrir para as perguntas.
Maybe it is too many people in here, or it's my connection. I'm very sorry for this.
Gereon, não sei se você está nos ouvindo. Se você quiser, de repente, desligar o seu vídeo. Juliana, acho que você que está em contato diretamente com o Gereon, se você puder mandar uma mensagem para ele entrar sem vídeo, e, por favor, avise ele que a gente está por aqui.
Tá bom. E acho que se você quiser começar, então, uma rodada de perguntas.
Acho que a gente pode começar uma rodada de perguntas. Ele chega, a gente pede para ele concluir, a gente já vai emendando as perguntas, porque já temos algumas chegando por aqui.
Uhum.
Bom, eu acho que a primeira pergunta que a gente já tem por aqui é diretamente para a Jiselle. E a gente tem uma pergunta sobre a atuação, como que eles desenvolvem esses projetos em outros países, que tipo de... a gente tem, na verdade, várias perguntas para a Jiselle. Eu vou tentar organizar em ordem. Então, uma primeira pergunta sobre como que eles desenvolvem esses projetos em outros países, de alguma maneira, como que eles constroem essas parcerias e como que eles podem ser contatados para parcerias em outros países, eles têm uma área de atuação específica. Algumas pessoas também perguntaram sobre a sustentabilidade dos negócios após a participação no programa, especialmente porque vocês trabalham com o público jovem. Bom, acho que são essas duas para a gente começar. Vou organizando aqui as demais e a gente vai vendo e respondendo à medida que a gente vai conversando aqui.
Sure. In terms of the projects that we run or where we deliver our programs is very closely linked to our business model. So I think I can answer those two questions together. So the way in which SocialStarters is a sustainable business itself, is through the income that we generate through our consultant programs, but also the funded capacity building programs that we deliver. So the consultant program is part funded by the social enterprises that take part, that pay a fee or a contribution for the time that is required to recruit the professionals to work with them. And the professionals also pay a fee for our role in matching them with the social enterprises that they're placed with, and then providing ongoing support to make sure that those placements run smoothly and troubleshoot any issues that come about. So it's a hybrid model of sorts in that the two key stakeholders, the business professionals and the social enterprises, both pay a fee which covers our running costs to be able to deliver those programs. And our ability to run programs in different locations is often connected to the demand that there is from social enterprises or from professionals in those locations. So when we initially started SocialStarters, we were invited to run a pilot in Kenya, and shortly afterwards were invited to run a program specifically for social enterprises in India, and then were able to make a call to professionals from around the world to find those that wanted to work with social enterprises based in those locations. But we do also run funded programs, which are not necessarily paid for by the social enterprise or the consultants, but rather through corporate partners or institutional partners. So the program that we ran in Rio, the Social Impact Incubator, was funded by the British Council and the DICE program, which was specifically set up to support marginalised groups from 5 countries across the world to enable them to further their impact and to create and to look at what the outcomes were when time and money was invested in those groups to help them to deliver creative and social enterprises. So that opportunity for us to run the incubator in its first year was with the support of the British Council DICE program, and we applied for that funding and secured it. But we also do run programs, as I say, that are funded by or paid for by the professionals that come on board as consultants and also the social enterprises. And that's what enables us to be sustainable as a business ourselves. But we're always very open in terms of locations of where we would like to work. I think it's driven by our passion for the particular social issues, but also where we as a team feel that we have a strong connection with the location as well. But obviously it only really works through partnerships, through connections, whether that be through institutional partners or corporate partners, or collaborations with local organisations that connect us with social entrepreneurs and professionals that want to take part in those programs and are willing to invest their time and money to do so. I think that's part of the, and then in terms of the sustainability of the programs, or rather the businesses that we work with, it does depend, but I think one of the key outcomes, or one of the most positive outcomes of the programs that we run with social enterprises is the network that is formed amongst the social entrepreneurs. So actually the legacy of these programs, whilst the businesses might change, whilst their levels of success and failure may vary beyond the end of the program, actually what does stay is the connections that they make with each other. So if the organization might pivot or change what they do or shift their focus, but the connections that they make between each other in terms of what they deliver, in terms of the possible connections that lead to new business or new opportunities, that network that's created is probably the most powerful and impactful thing that we deliver on these programs.
Obrigada, Gisele. Não sei se o Gereon conseguiu voltar. Não estou vendo ele por aqui. Fernanda, Ju, vocês estão conseguindo ver?
Gereon voltou, mas ele está com a câmera ligada, desligada, que eu sugeri.
Ah, perfeito. Gereon, já começamos a mover para as perguntas, então a gente viu que você estava ali numa fala praticamente de encerramento, então eu queria passar novamente a palavra para que você tiver alguma conclusão sobre a sua fala que você possa fazer, principalmente olhando para os aprendizados. E eu acho que você, no momento, falava um ponto mais específico sobre as parcerias e como que eram os programas que vocês desenvolviam em parceria com as empresas, a participação e esse trabalho em parceria. E a gente já está tendo algumas perguntas aqui muito focadas nessas parcerias e também no modelo de monetização dos projetos. Então, se você quiser fazer uma fala de fechamento, né, do seu raciocínio anterior, já trazendo esse ponto, a gente já começa essa discussão. Esse tema do modelo de monetização e de sustentabilidade financeira das organizações de apoio a empreendimentos de impacto, ela está bem presente na agenda dessas organizações de apoio a empreendedor aqui no Brasil. Então, se você puder fazer essa fala, e a gente já começa o bate-papo com você.
Okay, sorry again, my internet connection is unfortunately very...
Bom, acho que infelizmente a gente não vai conseguir ouvir o Gereon. Então, vou fazer o seguinte, enquanto ele tenta estabilizar talvez a internet dele, eu vou passar essa pergunta para a Jiselle. Jiselle, se você puder contar um pouquinho para a gente, então, sobre esse modelo de monetização da SocialStarters, como que vocês mantêm os seus programas, como eu mencionei.
Of course, it always definitely the learnings in home office go unexpected.
Eu acho que ele caiu de novo, Vivian. Então, se você quiser continuar a pergunta.
Jiselle, então, gente, peço super desculpas. Como vocês sabem, a tecnologia prega essas peças. Hoje eu estou sendo treinada com todas as minhas grandes habilidades de facilitação aqui. Mas eu queria, então, passar para a Jiselle. Por favor, Jiselle, se você puder falar um pouquinho sobre o modelo de monetização, como que vocês se sustentam, se vocês têm alguma cobrança pela prestação de serviço direto para o empreendedor, como que é essa atuação de vocês em relação aos consultores e aos mentores. Sei que vocês têm um programa de voluntariado, de aproximação com voluntários muito interessante. Se você puder contar um pouquinho para a gente, seria bem legal.
Yes, so in terms of the monetization model of SocialStarters, as I said before, it's a combination depending on the program. For example, with consultancy, we charge a fee to both the social enterprises and the consultants that take part, and that covers our costs. And the size of the program in terms of the cohorts, so the number of social enterprises or consultants taking part, then have an impact on how much income we're able to generate on any given program. We also have corporate partnerships for mentoring. So in those collaborations, the corporation covers the fees that we would typically charge for running those programs. So to find social enterprises that need that support and then identify and train the business mentors, that time is paid for by the corporates as part of their social responsibility programs, and then means that that is a free program for the social enterprises and is subsidized for the employees that obviously already work for the organization. And we also do apply for funding and grants to run bespoke programs such as the Social Impact Incubator that we delivered in Rio, or to subsidize where we might support social entrepreneurs in environments where they wouldn't be able to pay. So for example, in the programs that we run in India, in Sri Lanka and in Brazil, we do not charge the social entrepreneurs. Rather, the profits that SocialStarters are able to generate through our UK-based programs are then invested to cover the cost of what would be normally paid by the social enterprises in those regions where we're working with a group that may be not financially in a position to pay for the programs, or maybe facing significant barriers, which mean that we wouldn't expect them to pay for participation. We invest our profits or apply for funding to be able to cover the costs that is required to run those programs. And yes, the sort of combination of grant funding and paid for services means that we're able to have some flexibility, but it also does bring limitations in terms of our capacity. So we do have to run on typically a project by project basis. Through the income that we make, that's what covers our time to be able to deliver the programs. And we try and be proactive in seeking additional funding to complement that, but also obviously it's a very competitive landscape and sometimes it can be challenging to raise enough funds to run the programs, but we do endeavour to be flexible and agile in that, so that we can offer different support to different types of social enterprises, and wherever possible subsidise the costs in those cases where the social enterprises can't pay for themselves, or where professionals which is more rare, can't necessarily pay for themselves. For example, we offer bursaries for professionals that might want to take part in our programs but can't afford to pay the full fee. And that means that we're able to try and offer programs for a really diverse group of people.
Muito obrigada, Gisele. A gente tem uma segunda pergunta aqui, agora movendo um pouco mais para o campo da inovação, especialmente inovação aberta, vocês que atuam em diversos países do mundo. A pergunta é como que se você está vendo essa questão da inovação aberta focada na geração de impacto social e ambiental, vinda de grandes empresas, isso no cenário europeu e em outros países nos quais vocês atuam. E se você acredita que é possível pensar em um modelo de inovação que seja inclusivo e que se leve em consideração as tecnologias sociais que de alguma forma são provenientes de comunidades e de comunidades tradicionais e que muitas vezes não é incluído nesses modelos de inovação gerado por essas grandes empresas.
I think it's an interesting question, not necessarily an easy one to answer, but I think in terms of social innovation, social enterprises are often at the forefront of innovation in business, just because the very model of what they do, generating income, but also generating impact is very innovative. It shouldn't be, but it really is in terms of how we think that business has been operating for many, many years. And so in trying to find creative solutions to the current big issues that the world is facing, doing something with purpose, but also generating income, a lot of the social enterprises that we work with are innovative in their approach and just thinking differently about how to address some of these solutions. But I think something that is happening more and more now is that it's not necessarily a separation between big corporate business and social enterprise. The two worlds are coming closer and closer together. The B Corp movement, which is happening, I think, is one of the biggest networks in the world, is in Brazil, where you have organizations that could be a social enterprise, but also could be a traditional business that are registered as B Corps, so recognizing the value of purpose, profit, and environmental impact, and each of those having equal footing. And therefore, whether it's a big corporation or a small social enterprise, they're being innovative about how they address all of those three objectives, how they make sure that the service or product that they deliver is strong on profit, strong on purpose, and strong on environmental or limiting environmental impact or having a positive environmental impact. So I think the innovation is becoming less expected from social enterprise, or the worlds are blurring a bit more, which I think can only be positive. But I think it's important that existing social enterprises that have been operating in this space for many years are getting the support to grow and compete with large corporations, because I suppose a downside could be that with larger businesses moving into this space is that the market becomes more not necessarily an issue with being more competitive, but actually those large corporations that have so much more resource can maybe dominate, where actually those smaller social enterprises or those who have been innovating for a long time aren't getting the platform that they normally would. And it should be a case of the two different worlds sort of supporting each other to do more, rather than one being squeezed out by the influence or dominance of another. So I think there's some exciting things around social innovation and entrepreneurship. I think the two go hand in hand, and we're seeing that big business and social entrepreneurs are actually sort of coming close together, and there's not not that there's not a distinction, but there isn't required to be such a distinction. Actually, good business should be social and should be purposeful as well, and equally a good social enterprise should be profitable, because if it's not, then it's not functioning. So the two things go hand in hand.
Obrigada, Gisele. A gente viu aqui no chat que o Gereons está tentando fortemente responder às nossas perguntas, então queria pedir para que vocês dessem uma olhadinha no chat. Ele tentou responder um pouco como que a organização, que de alguma forma a Bianca colocou aqui a tradução já, a forma como que eles são monetizados, ou como que a própria incubadora se mantém. Então aqui vocês podem acompanhar a resposta dele. Então ele diz que eles têm parcerias e financiamentos da própria incubadora, especialmente da Fundação Carlos Tigubequian, e também eles cobram a taxa de parceria com empresas, e eles também eles não dão equity para algumas, não oferecem equity para algumas organizações, e para as startups o apoio que eles oferecem é totalmente de graça. Bom, Eu vou... alguém aqui mencionou, acho que a Giovana disse que gostaria de que essa pergunta de inovação fosse encaminhada também para o Geron. Nós também gostaríamos bastante, acho que ele caiu novamente, mas a gente está tentando contato, e caso a gente não consiga, a gente vai tentar marcar um segundo momento com ele, ou eventualmente mandar as perguntas para que ele possa responder. Eu queria aproveitar... Oi?
Vivian, só para aproveitar com você, eu já consegui falar com o Geron, ele já falou que ele manda as respostas depois, ele pediu 1000 desculpas para todos, porque ele realmente está com um problema na internet, ele está tentando entrar e não consegue ficar, mas ele vai mandar as respostas para a gente manda para vocês depois por escrito.
Perfeito, obrigada, Ju. Bom, eu acho que a gente já aqui está caminhando para o final. Eu tenho uma pergunta que eu queria aproveitar a participação aqui da Jiselle para a gente conversar um pouco. A gente sabe que uma das grandes dificuldades para os empreendedores tem sido muito a questão do acesso a capital e também acesso a mercados, especialmente porque muitas vezes os negócios, né, oferecidos, eles precisam criar mercados e tem todo um investimento que precisa ser feito para a gente estruturar melhor esses mercados. A Jiselle tem trabalhado com negócios em diferentes países, aqui no Brasil também com uma grande diversidade de negócios, de diferentes tipos, e muito trabalhado também com negócios que nascem na comunidade, da comunidade para a comunidade também. Eu queria que ela pudesse falar um pouquinho, né, caminhando já para essas falas finais, já que ela trouxe também alguns aprendizados, mas que ela pudesse trazer aqui um pouco das competências que ela acredita que seria importante para as aceleradoras e incubadoras, especialmente olhando para essa questão de acesso a mercado e acesso a capital, que são dois dos grandes desafios que grande parte das nossas aceleradoras e incubadoras também enfrentam aqui no Brasil.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of market access and access to investment, I think there certainly is a need to provide training and skills development to entrepreneurs, and particularly those from, well, just any entrepreneur that's sort of breaking into a new market needs that support. But I also think that there does also need to be a challenge to the investors and also to those that have the contracts that are seeking organizations to work with them, to train them on how they can better connect with more and have more diversity in terms of the types of organizations that they work with, from recognizing, how they can simplify procurement processes, whether or not the sort of calls for contracts or for contractors actually is inclusive in terms of gender or race, ethnicity, whether it's exclusive, and actually really does connect with those different types of groups. And sort of challenging themselves to think about how there can be more diversity in how they engage with different businesses for the work they have to offer. But from the social enterprise side, I think that there is a real necessity to really make sure that the sort of back house is in order, that the office in terms of financial management, in terms of operations, in terms of really being clear on what their processes are. That needs to be very well organized to be able to make a business case to a possible investor or a possible a procurer, someone that has business to offer. If a social enterprise or entrepreneur isn't able to demonstrate what their profitability is, how they operate and how they would manage sort of larger orders, for example, or respond to a large contract, then they aren't really in a position to really apply, or they are already on a at a disadvantage. And so training around that, making sure that the business is in order on a very basic level is very important, but also how to sort of market themselves in a way that speaks to those investors and speaks to those contractors in their language also. As I say, I think there needs to be somewhere of meeting in the middle, but I also think that social entrepreneurs can be skilled up in how to sort of adopt the language, the culture that these contractors or suppliers or investors have at the moment, because I think there needs to be some compromise in sort of meeting in the middle. And so providing support to those entrepreneurs on how to make sure that they're sort of re-highlighting the benefits and the strengths of their businesses, what makes them different from a more traditional business, and actually what the benefits are to that, rather than just trying to sort of fit in, is very important. But it's about how to articulate that and make sure that comes across very clearly. So something around sort of marketing and communication, but also just effective management of the business day to day, to demonstrate that that's a safe pair of hands, they know what they're doing, and they can manage significant contracts and investment if it comes.
Obrigada, Jiselle. Bom, seguindo então para o final da nossa conversa de hoje, infelizmente, realmente a gente vai ter que, em algum outro momento, trazer as respostas do Gereon. Acho que com certeza ele teria bastante coisa para contribuir aqui, mas a gente vai encontrar aí uma nova oportunidade. Gisele, você mencionou alguns aprendizados na sua fala final. Você falou sobre a capacidade de se adaptar do global para o local, a interseccionalidade, a importância de ter um olhar que, de alguma forma, considere todas as interseccionalidades, especialmente em relação a raça e gênero, a importância de se criar redes, de se trabalhar remoto. Acho que você trouxe uma série de reflexões, de aprendizados que vocês têm trazido. Se você tivesse agora, nesses momentos finais, que apresentar uma reflexão ou um aprendizado para essa rede de incubadores e aceleradores que está atuando aqui no Brasil, a partir da sua experiência, você conseguiria elencar um desses aprendizados ou uma nova reflexão que você acha que seria fundamental para esse trabalho? Para a gente fazer aqui um encerramento com a sua consideração final sobre os aprendizados e reflexões para essas organizações que estão de alguma forma, caminhando e fortalecendo suas ações para o apoio a empreendedores de impacto.
Sure, I can definitely try. So I think sort of in a complement or underpinning all of the things that we've done so far is SocialStarters is sort of living the challenges of social entrepreneurs as a social enterprise itself. And I think that ability to identify with the issues that social entrepreneurs are facing, and if you can't personally, but actually going out to find out what are the real pain points, what are the issues, and really trying to understand those, whether that be from direct experience or from connecting with those entrepreneurs, is very important, because that will then inform what program or service you offer. It should be 100% user-led. It should be designed for the social enterprises and ideally by the social enterprises. And that's what helped us to create the Social Impact Incubator. We ran focus groups and workshops with female social entrepreneurs from favela and periphery communities before designing and running that program, to understand what their needs were or what were the gaps from what already exists, because there was a lot of support out there or attempting to reach female social entrepreneurs, but there were definitely also gaps. And that's similar for all of the programs. We try to think about how we can complement what already exists or identify what the gaps are to support for entrepreneurs. And the best way to do that is by connecting with those individuals and those groups and asking them what are the problems you're facing now, what support do you offer, and what's missing from that, or what works really well and what we could do more of. So I think in addition to sort of being to really sort of understanding sort of the local context, I think just making sure it's a user or enterprise-led program in terms of what you're offering, rather than coming up with the idea and then trying to give it or get social entrepreneurs to take part. Ideally, it should be co-designed, something that you develop in collaboration with social entrepreneurs or enterprises, and then it's likely to be more impactful and actually be more beneficial for you as the intermediary, but also for the social entrepreneurs.
Muito obrigada, Gisele. Bom, temos algumas perguntas aqui ainda que a gente não conseguiu responder, mas nós vamos organizar melhor as perguntas e respostas, encaminhar, talvez para a Gisele também alguma pergunta que eventualmente tenha passado aqui, não tenha passado aqui no nosso filtro por conta do tempo, porque as perguntas são interessantíssimas. Eu gostaria de agradecer mais uma vez a participação de todos vocês, agradecer aos nossos palestrantes, agradecer a Gisele pela generosidade de compartilhar com a gente a sua experiência, também ao Gereon, que não conseguiu participar com a gente da fase das perguntas, mas a gente está bastante feliz de organizar mais essa conversa e ter todos vocês aqui conosco. Então, o nosso muito obrigada, e que a gente possa se encontrar mais vezes e trocar experiências, porque a gente acha que essa troca de experiência entre organizações brasileiras e organizações de outros países também é fundamental para a gente avançar o nosso trabalho aqui. Muito obrigada a todos, uma boa tarde, um bom almoço. Até a próxima.